Hello, dear students. Uh, in this class, I will be discussing with you about the national income accounting and especially the GDP. So, first of all, what is the national income accounting? National income accounting, it is the measurement of the country's total output. It is the maintenance of the country's records. Just like the businesses, they are maintaining their balance sheet, profit loss accounts, just to check that whether their country is producing more as compared to the previous output, or it is producing less than their previous output. So during the Great Depression in 1930s, when America suffered the worst ever depression of the history, economic depression, and which is known as the Great Depression. It started in 1930 and continues up to 1939. During that 10-year time period, the economy of the America failed, and that Great Depression also affected the other countries, especially the Europe and the Britain. So before the Great Depression, the countries, they were maintaining their micro data. They were not maintaining their macroeconomic or aggregate data. So at that time, they thought, the economists suggested to maintain their accounting records. And before the Great Depression, the dominant school of thought was the classical school of thought. The Adam Smith ideology was dominant, means let the economy, or let the people decide, or let the economy correct itself. But due to the huge decline in the overall output of the America, more than 20% unemployment, reached unemployment. So at that time, the new school of thought emerged, that is called the Keynesian school of thought. The John Maynard Keynes suggested that countries should interfere, the government should interfere, government should involve just to correct the ups and downs in the economy. So if you are not correcting, the government is not correcting the economic downfalls, helping the economy to recover, then these downfalls will continue to become the depressions. So at that time, the two famous economists, and both were given the economic Nobel prizes, Simon Kuznets and Richard Stone. They have given the concept that how to maintain the national income accounts. So in the national income accounts, whenever we talk about the macroeconomics, one of the most important topic of the macroeconomics is the gross domestic product. It is the gross domestic product. So, what is the gross domestic product? Gross domestic product is the total country's output. All the goods and services produced by an economy within the borders of the economy, the total output produced within the borders of the country. If you could call this country or the economy, that everything from pin to missile, everything from the goods to the services produced and provided within the borders of an economy during a given time period, and that given time period is usually the 12 months time period. We also call it is the market value of all final goods and services. It is the market value of all final goods and services. And it is, we also use the term the final goods and the services. And we also measure the output of a country that the market prices, when we convert our total output at the market prices, if we say suppose, if a country is producing 10 paints, just suppose we say this is the total output of a country, and if we say that this is the total GDP of the country, so what is the GDP of this country? We convert the 10 paints into selling price. If we say suppose that 10 rupees is the price of a single paint and the number of paints are 10, so we have 100. So this is the total GDP of a particular economy during a given time period. So if we say suppose if a country is producing the paints, books, computers, cars, rice, wheat, and other items. So all these items are converted according to their market prices. After converting these items at their market price means selling price, and then we add all the values, and the total value is known as the GDP, the gross domestic product. So why we say that gross domestic product? The gross domestic product, we are saying this is gross domestic product because still we have to minus the depreciation from the total output, because throughout the year, throughout the time period, whatever has been produced, that may be wear and tear because of the usage, because of the time passage, the resources, their value decreases. So that's why there is a term, the depreciation. So that is why we are using the term gross, because still something will be minus from the total output. And why we say this is the domestic? We use the term domestic because everything which is produced within the borders of a country, regardless that who has produced, whether the output produced within the country by the residents or the people who are the citizens of that country, or it is produced by the people who are not the actual citizens of this country, but they are working in this country. If just we say, suppose, in Pakistan, people, they have the domiciles, they have the ID cards, and they claim that they are the nationals of this country. We say that 98% population is the local, means they are the actual citizens of a country. Whatever they are producing will be added, and we say suppose there are 2% people who are not the actual citizens of this country, but they are also producing in our country, like the Afghanis, the Chinese, and many other foreigners who are working on different projects. So their output will also be included into the GDP. So the term domestic means anything which has been produced, which is going to be produced within the boundaries of a particular economy or of a country, and that output will be added. So Why we need to use the term domestic? Because during the calculation of the GDP, we are not counting the output produced by the people of that country who are working in other countries. So whatever they are producing there, whatever they are sending to their relatives or to their family members or to their country will not be included into the GDP. So the term gross domestic product, it is the total output produced within the borders of a country in a given time period. The term given time period means usually we measure the GDP for a year, but we also measure the GDP on the quarter basis. So the time period is very much necessary that the GDP, discussion of the GDP will be included. So to continue the discussion of the GDP, because it's a very important, and the gross domestic product or this total output of a country is one of the most powerful indicators. On the basis of this indicator, we can differentiate the living standards of the people who are living in different countries. And with the help of the GDP, we can also calculate the per capita income. Per capita income means when we distribute our total output among the population of that country, and the average amount, which if we equally distribute, though it's a theoretical concept, that when we distribute, just we say suppose this is the total output of the country, this is the GDP of the country, or the total production of the country for a year, we say suppose 2019, and the population is 10, the 10 is the total population of this country. So the GDP divided by population, whatever the amount, it will give you the per capita income or per head income. This is suppose 10. 10 is the per capita income of the people who are living in that country. That actual, though it's not the actual figure, but we say suppose the people who are living in this country, they are enjoying, their income level is around 10. So in reality, if we say suppose the USA per capita income is almost $40,000 per year, means per head income of the American people is around $40,000, and the per head income of the Pakistani people is around $1,400. So you can see. So without visiting the country, on the basis of the per capita income, we can also determine the living standards, or we can also understand the living standard of the people, that what facilities they are enjoying. And the rest of the rich countries, they are enjoying around per capita income around 20 to 40,000, or even some countries they have the 80,000 per capita dollars per year. This is the annual income on average. And when we say GDP, so how to differentiate the GDP and the GNP? The GNP term, it is the gross national product. The GNP is the gross national product of a country. Now, what is the difference between the GDP and the GNP? The difference of the N and D. N for the national and the D for the domestic. So when we calculate the GDP, We only count the total output produced within the borders of the country. And when we calculate the GNP, we only calculate the output produced by the citizens or the nationals of a particular country, whether they are working in their own country or they are working in outside their country. But it will be counted. And so if we say, suppose GDP is the gross domestic product, suppose we say we have the 100 rupees total output produced for a particular year. To convert the GDP into the GNP, to convert GDP to GNP, we aim for an income of the people who are working in other countries, but they are the citizens of a particular country, and we minus the foreigners' income. This is the income of the people who are working in our country. If we say, suppose that 100 is the total GDP, now we have included the foreigners' income. Now we say, suppose GDP, foreigners' income is, foreign income is, suppose we say 20. That the people who are living in other countries, but they are our country's people, they are earning 20, whatever, 20 billion, 20 crores, or 20 lakhs, or 20,000, whatever you use the figure. And so this will be the pillar's figure added into the GDP, and minus the foreigners' income. Just like the Afghanis, the Chinese, they are working in our country, and whatever they earn, when they are sending that money to their relatives to outside of our country, if you say suppose 15, then the difference will be plus 5. So we add 5 to 100. So our GNP will be 105. It means the GNP value is greater than GDP because our people, they are earning more in outside countries and sending to their country, our country, and foreigners who are working in our country, they are sending less as compared to our earning. So even in recent times, today, Pakistan is receiving the highest amount of the foreign remittances. The earnings of the Pakistani people who are working in other countries, and that's why our dollars nowadays is stabilized. Rupee dollar value is just stabilizing. There is stabilization in the value of the rupee dollar. Even the dollar's value is falling. So this is the difference. Now, another term. Whenever we talk about the GDP or the national output or the output of a country, we have one, the nominal GDP, and another is the real GDP. Usually the economists, they are concerned with the real GDP, the real figures. Nominal GDP means it's the GDP by year at current market prices. The GDP, if we say suppose we are measuring the GDP of 2019 and 20, the total output converted according to the 2019-20 prices, and when we measure the GDP according to the current prices, current market prices of that time's market prices, we have the GDP, and we call this one the nominal GDP. And usually the nominal GDP, the current nominal GDP is greater than the previous year's nominal GDP because of the reality that always prices are rising. There is a reality that everyday prices are rising as compared to the last prices. And the real GDP is that GDP when we calculate the GDP according to base year prices, according to the selected year prices, or when we minus the impact of inflation from the nominal GDP. So in real GDP, usually we count the number of the products, and nominal GDP most of the times are usually less than the nominal GDP is greater than the real GDP. So this is very important to understand that nominally, when we use the term nominal, if we say suppose the nominal GDP is 100 for the 2019-20, and if we calculate the GDP according to the base year prices, suppose 2005 or whatever the base year of selected year, we say suppose the nominal GDP is 90, real GDP and nominal GDP. So this is very important to understand this difference also. And GDP counts the final goods. GDP is measuring the value of final goods. Final goods mean the goods which are going to be consumed, which are going to be used. They are not going to be processed. But for some sectors, some goods are final, and for some other sectors, they are not final. Just like milk is final for the drinking or consumption purpose, but for the ice cream producer, the milk is the intermediate good. Some goods are final and others are intermediate. So to avoid double counting of the goods, the value of final goods and services counted are included into the GDP. And now we are going to discuss about the measurement of the GDP, that how we measure the GDP. What are the methods to measure the GDP, and how it is possible that we are able to measure the entire economy's output? And there are three different techniques, and all three gives almost same amount of the figure, same value. So here in today's class, I will be discussing only about one of the technique to measure the GDP. So first of all, I am sharing or discussing that what are the three different techniques to measure the GDP. So one of the technique is the expenditure approach. Method or approach to measure the GDP. Through this method, we add all the expenditures incurred in an economy. We are discussing later on this. And the second technique is the income approach. Or income method to measure the GDP. And the third one is the value-added approach. Or value-added technique or production method or production technique. So these are the three methods to measure the GDP. And all these three methods, they give the same figure. And as we know that there is a circular flow of income. Income circulates in a circle. Just we say, suppose households. Here we have the firms. Here we have the markets for the goods and services. Here we have the factor markets. So these households, they are the suppliers of the resources. They supply the land, labor and capital, and in return they earn the income, the wages, the rent, the interest, the profit. And from these markets, the firms hire the labor, they purchase the capital and entrepreneurial abilities, and in return they make the payments. And firms produce the goods and services. These goods are sold to the markets, and from these markets they receive the prices of the income. And these goods are purchased by the households, and they make the payments, they pay the prices. So if the banks are there, so the government is there, people and the firms pay the taxes to the government. So when we say that when someone is spending, on the other side someone is receiving. So every three is the expenditure side and the income side. So on the basis of this circular flow, we have this concept that GDP is measured through the three techniques. So first technique is the GDP according to the expenditure approach. Method. Through this method, we add all the expenditures incurred in an economy throughout